general casual conversation, man, just about things that we deal with in the diabetes community. I think this is something that a lot of people they don't really talk about these things, you know. And I heard Chelsea on the people of color living with diabetes. He said a lot of stuff that really resonated that I think with the black community in general, just in regards to how we kind of talk about things. And I think as men, we sometimes don't really I, I don't think we talk about a lot of stuff, but I think when it comes to this, we need to talk to somebody because it's a lot that goes into it, especially physically and mentally. And for us, we big, we strong, we bad, we know that. But at the end of the day, we carry a lot of stuff that people don't even understand what we go through. So I just want to thank you guys for joining us on Bolus Maximus today. I'm gonna go ahead and jump into it. My name is Brandon A. Denson, and I'm a part of Bolus Maximus. Thank you for joining us on this Saturday, February 20th, 2021. I'm going to be co hosting with my main man, Michael Robertson, aka Glucose Gang. And we're going to jump right into this. So, Michael, I'm going to let you go ahead and take it over, and then I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
Thanks, Brandon. I appreciate it. What's up, everybody? I'm Michael. What do y'all want to know about me? I guess I kind of tell like where I'm from. So I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in 1999, which is a long time ago. Man, I've been living with it for this long. I'm originally born and raised in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Me and Brandon are actually we're from the same city, basically. But yeah, man, that's a little bit about me. I'm just glad to be on this call with y'all. Glad to see this fellowship, so to speak, and I can't wait to see what comes next.
So I'll go ahead and I'll go ahead, Antoine. I'll let you go. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Where you're from? How long you been living with diabetes?
All right, what up? Antoine Gibson here from Atlanta, Georgia. I got diagnosed in. I'm moving to some light. I'm trying to move around. All right, I'll sit back down. Since 2001, been on this very fun, terrible journey, and yeah. So I don't know what else I gotta say. What else I gotta say?
That's good, man. That's good.
Oh, all right, but yeah, good to meet y'all, man. The people I don't know. I've seen a couple of you guys, interact through Instagram and social media and Twitter and group me and all that good stuff. So, good to rap with y'all, face to face on Zoom, to meet y'all and stuff like that. So yeah, it's good to see, man, black bros with diabetes, dog. It's good to see a whole bunch of y'all, dog. You don't see too many of us, in the world in person. Like I don't meet too many people that look like me that know exactly what I'll be going through. So it's good to meet folk and talk and rap, man. Yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you.
So,
Dan Newman, go ahead and introduce yourself, man. Let us know where you're from on the other side of the world.
So yeah, I'm Daniel. I'm originally I was born in London in the UK. Living with type 1 for just over, coming up to 25 years this year. And yeah, it's just good to be on the call. I think that some conversations that I've seen within the community when it comes to advocacy, particularly when you're Black, is that when you're not just you're advocating for people with type 1, but you're also advocating for people who look like you, and also as we're older men, the younger men or young boys, so that they have someone to see in living with type 1, because I never had anyone to look up to. And I think that a lot of things come into play when it comes to our advocacy as Black men, but also as Black people, where it's not just as simple as saying, I'm not going to work with, or I won't support this company because they don't do this, but actually, well, if I work with this company, then there'll be another Black face there, which might help somebody else who isn't in the community, who might see somebody who looks like them. And I just think there's so many things that come into play. So yeah, looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Let's go ahead and kick it to Tyrese Butler.
Hey everyone, thanks Brandon again for inviting me on here. My son has type 1. He's going on 5 years with it. He was diagnosed at 18 months, and that's when our journey began. And really searching, for help, and trying to see people who look like us. And again, I've said it before. Daryl's been a great help. As soon as I, told him, my son was diagnosed, he was like, "Well, I got type 1 too," and I was like, "I didn't even know." So, big help. Again, Tyrese Butler. I'm here in Indianapolis, Indiana. So look forward to this conversation.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. Chelsea Rice, my man.
Greetings, fellas, on this fine Saturday morning. My name is Chelsea Rice, coming to you from Pensacola, Florida, by way of Atlanta, Georgia. I've been in Pensacola for like a couple of years now. And I was diagnosed back in around 1988, 1989. So I've been living with type 1 for a little over 30 years now. Fast forward to, I would say around 2012 is when I actually started advocating by way of social media and meeting other people that are living with diabetes or either affected by diabetes, with their caregivers, being invited to different conferences and whatnot. And so I kind of got started that way. And that's where I started noticing there was so few people of color at these conferences and participating in these diabetes research studies. And it kind of led me to kind of, make my face seen, whether it be online or in, face-to-face at some of these conferences, because for a condition that affects people of color more than it does, white people, it doesn't make sense for us not to be present. And my goal is to either make these folks aware that there's some folks missing from this table, and to make the folks that are missing from the table to get up and get involved and make your presence known. You don't need to wait around for somebody to sit out a chair for you. Either bring your own chair or, all else fails, build your own table.
Appreciate that. No, you're absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. So I'm going to kick it to Daryl Morton.
Yeah, hey, really quickly, I woke my son up, man. He's 15. He's a 15-year-old. He thinks he's a budding wide receiver, man. But I'm gonna let him. You got to come around this way a little bit. This way. Introduce yourself.
I know you're not camera shy.
Yeah.
What's up, man? How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Nice to finally meet you. I've heard a lot of good things about you, man.
Yeah, you think he the stuff, man. So yeah, he's 15. Tell him when he was diagnosed.
I think I was diagnosed around 2006, 2005.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's a 15-year-old playing football at a high level here in Indianapolis, and one of the most competitive conferences in Indiana, and doing a really good job and starting to get some college interest already as a freshman, man. But need to get these damn grades straight right now. We're handling diabetes. We're not handling grades though. But as you know, Brandon and Tyrese both played Division I football at Michigan and Michigan State. And so at some point I'm gonna connect y'all. Yeah, he's an Ohio State guy. Is Ohio State is where he wants to go. So
oh man, that's more of a rival for Tyrese than me, but it's a rival.
Yeah, I'm gonna let him go back to sleep at 12:30 in the afternoon on Saturday.
Oh man, come on! You supposed to be getting some filming or some speed and agility work or something, man. I'm just messing with you. It was a pleasure to meet you, big dog.
You too.
All right.
And then I was also played football at Indiana State, but I was diagnosed in 2003 on the football field, and now live in Indianapolis, and had the pleasure to meet Tyrese a long time ago through mutual friends, and I'm happy to be here. Working college sports by day, so I've been extremely busy, which is why I haven't had a chance to make many of the calls, because we're trying to put a NCAA men's Final Four together down here in Indianapolis to play in one city, which has never been done before. So a lot of that is on my shoulders, man. So if you guys are into the prayer thing, I ask you said prayer for your boy, because it's hectic right now, man. We're trying to get this thing organized, but it's been rough. So
Hey, man, we
good to
got
see the
faith.
brethren, to connect with y'all.
We got faith in you, man. If it's somebody that can get it done, it's you. So we not worried. We not worried.
Tell my bosses and tell CBS and Turner that, man.
All right. Last but not least, Terrell Riley, go ahead, introduce yourself, where you're from, and when you were diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. I think you might be on mute. Nope.
How about that?
We can hear you now.
Okay. I forgot I had put it on mute on my phone. Anyway, my name is Terrell. I'm from Atlanta, originally from Michigan. Wolverine, go blue. Yeah, I know. But I was originally diagnosed back in 2007. Had a honeymoon phase of a few years. I've been living with it every day since 2015. Let's see. Glad to be a part of these calls, with people who look like me, especially on the men's side, because, it's hard enough to be a type 1 diabetic and be Black and not have a lot of representation, but also to be a male, which seems like it's another layer of that. I know when I was first coming into this, I was like, where's everybody that looks like me? And it was that was a challenge, where all my family's back home in Michigan, and I don't have any type 1 diabetics in my family. You kind of feel like you're on an island, and for me it was doing everything on your own and trying to figure everything out, because it was like who you reach out to, and that was before social media and everything was really big at the time. And just over the last year and a half, 2 years, finding a community that's meant a lot to me. And as more and more people, come aboard with that, I just feel it's even more important for me, knowing what I know now, just to be able to share what I've learned. And as I've said before, just the interchange of encouragement between, brothers like myself, all around the world, just to be able to share what I know and to learn from other people. It's just been great for me.
We appreciate that, man. We appreciate that. So let's go ahead and let's jump into this. And I'm gonna throw the mentoring. I think this is something, I know honestly, me growing up and being diagnosed at 17, mentoring, it wasn't a thing. I didn't have anybody to mentor me in that space. And like Chelsea said, it's one of those things that we can either kind of stand back and honestly kind of look at it like either we're going to stand back and not get involved, or we're going to pull up a chair and figure out how do we show up to represent, people in the Black community, so we can get other people involved, because at the end of the day, we are our strongest advocate. So I'm gonna jump into I'm gonna ask Chelsea, how has the mentoring been like with you since you've been living with diabetes for close to 30 years? Like how has that affected you in a positive or a negative way in regards to either having a mentor or not having a mentor?
When I was first diagnosed, like I said, I was diagnosed back in the late 80s. There weren't really any mentoring programs. Let's go back. We're talking like the late 80s here. So we didn't have internet. We didn't even have AOL or these early chat groups. If you cats old enough to remember. And so anything that you would come across as far as like any type of support group or whatever, you would come by word of mouth by your physician or a nurse or something. You might pick up a flyer at the doctor's office. And so, I a couple of times went to a one of these little get-togethers, and it turned out I was the youngest one there because I was 25. Everybody else there was like senior citizens and all white. You know, so they they were looking at me like I was coming to park the car or something, you know, because this was Athens, Georgia, back in the late '80s. You know, things weren't exactly as progressive as they claim to be now back then. So I didn't come up with that. So a lot of it was pretty much I was on my own, and literally I never had anything even remotely close to a mentor until, let's say, well into up in the early 2000s when social media came along. That's when I actually started meeting people with diabetes, you know, face to face, and you know, having conversations about it, because it just wasn't available to me. So it, the mentoring I got from the people that I work with, as far as advocating, it's helped me immensely, because that's how I found out about, whether it be insulin pumps or CGMs, being able to question my doctor. You know, I don't just what, you know, if something wasn't right, then I just ask him. If he didn't give me a proper answer, then he gets fired and I go somewhere else. That all came from the connections that I made in that diabetes community. That's specifically the diabetes online community. That's where I got the courage to stand up and advocate for myself. And that's one of the things we try to teach folks coming into this condition is, at some point you need to learn how to advocate for yourself before you start advocating for others. And
I,
so that's where that came from.
okay.
And so, you know, it helped me immensely once I found tribe, if you want to toss that word around. And just like we're doing right now, I think we're going to start to benefit others who are newly diagnosed and don't know what's going on and don't know what to do and where to reach out to. And so I think that's where we're coming into our own, where we're starting to take advantage of these opportunities, and creating a space for folks like us who, just when we first started, many of us may not have had mentors, but then those that do, we get it. And so I think that's where we're really jumping off right now and actually getting that moving.
For sure. And I appreciate you sharing that. And one thing that I picked up on that's very crucial, you said that you have to be able to advocate for yourself before you can advocate for others. That's huge, because it's like you can't help anybody else if you're not helping yourself, So that's extremely important.
Daryl, can I ask you a question about mentorship as well? So what's your mentorship experience been? You know what I mean? I know you and your son, y'all both live with type 1 diabetes, right? So what does that look like?
From a mentorship standpoint of other folks who have diabetes, or just in general?
Just in general, just overall, and
Yeah, so in general, I mean, and Tyrese can tell you, I'm extremely involved in the community. In fact, I have a conversation. I had a conversation earlier this morning with Lawrence Township school systems about trying to help young Black males in general create pathways for themselves from the times they enter into high school until the time they get out. And so we're creating a program right now called Bears to Men, essentially that educates kids on everything else off the field: how to tie a tie, how to change a tire, how to balance a checkbook, how to legally make money right now. So Robinhood, there's a number of different ways that you can generate revenue right now as a young child that are legal, that can be done now. And we've got a lot of kids in this community who don't have dads in the household and or parents. And so I do focus heavily right now on a lot of mentor type stuff. I talked to Brandon about this. He asked me about speaking last week. I'm not ashamed to share this with you guys. One thing I have not been as forthright with is sharing kind of my diabetic story. It's just not something that I personally or DJ, we talked about this before. It's just not something that we've done a lot of. Not necessarily opposed to it. I know DJ has worked at a diabetes camp since he's been 10 or 11 years old and continues to do it, but it's just something that we have not done a ton of. I don't think it's something that we're necessarily ashamed of. And the people who know me know I'm diabetic. I don't hide it. I just don't go around mentoring kids on it. But long-winded way of saying that I'm extremely involved in the community with mentoring, both at my son's school, and also lead a group downtown that's focused on homeless family homelessness amongst families. So it's a homeless shelter downtown that only accepts homeless families. So you have to have kids. And so I also do a bunch for them too. So heavily involved in the community, man, just not doing as much as I probably should be doing in terms of my diabetic journey.
Man, I love what you said about maybe not necessarily feeling like you haven't shared so much of your story when it comes to diabetes. You know what I mean? I think a lot of times as type 1 diabetics, it's not the easiest thing, right? You know what I mean? When you're first diagnosed, there's that initial feeling of, well, this will pass, and then you come to find out this is like a lifelong thing, and there's a bit of acceptance, right? There's a bit of acceptance that comes with it. I love the fact that you're honest about, you know what I mean, maybe not necessarily wanting to feel like you want to share that information. Yeah. I have a really, really good friend, and I've been trying to get him to come on to my live show, man. He's a great guy all around, but he's just like, man, like he told me, he was like, a lot of people aren't as open with their diabetes as you are. You know what I mean? And I was like, that's a really valid point. So thank you for saying that.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, and for me, it's not, like I said, it's nothing I'm ashamed of. And Tyrese knows I don't hide it at all. It's not a secret. It's not something. I mean, Tyrese and I've gotten in trouble by my girlfriend a few times for talking to Tyrese for 2 or 3 hours at a time, man. I'm sure Tyrese has done the same. It's not something I'm ashamed of. It's just, for me, it's hard for me to talk about stuff in the community that I'm not a master at managing. That's the biggest thing for me. And so for me, if I go around talking about diabetes and how you should kill it, but my A1C is, 8.6 or, high or something like that, then for me, it's like, how can I go around telling other people how to manage diabetes when I'm struggling with it myself? And I don't think that's the right or wrong thing to do. It's just me being real with y'all. Like, for me, it's just not something, it's not a space where I'm willing to kind of step out and just say, look, this is what you should be doing. Now, what I will say, and I told Brandon this last week, is one of my biggest pet peeves is meeting people who have diabetes that walk around and act like they're handicapped, or walk around and act like just because they have diabetes, they can't do stuff. They can't go to work. They can't work out. They can't play sport. That's a problem for me. And Tyrese knows I have been very vocal about that. Just because you get diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic don't mean that the world stops. I've even told Tyrese's young son that, like, you can still be a dog on the football field with diabetes. There's a lot of people in the league doing it right now. And so it's something that I will work on, but first and foremost, man, I got to get a little better at managing myself.
Can I jump in on that right quick?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Ain't nobody expecting you to get it, because it's unrealistic for us all to get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because here's the thing that gets me about social media, and a lot of these folks that are proclaiming to be advocates for diabetes and any other chronic illness, when they post these pictures of themselves, all this posing and grinning and skinning with the injecting and all this kind of stuff, that's all well and cute, but it ain't real. Okay, be real. Let folks know I'm struggling with this. My A1C ain't perfect either, but we can get through this shit together. We don't have to sit here and let each other fall by the wayside and both of us sitting around moping. Yeah, my A1C is a little bit out of control and yours is too, but we can work through this together till we can actually get ourselves back on track. That's the key, is not to project that I got it to anybody, because ain't nobody got it. I'm telling you that right now. I don't care what kind of pictures they posted on Facebook, social media, Twitter, whatever, all this dancing around and stuff. Ain't nobody got it. Nobody has it down pat, or else they can stop going to the doctor. Yeah. Right?
You
okay.
hit it. Yeah.
So that's the thing. We're all in this together. That's what we need to start professing, because this is where a lot of Black folks get to the point where we, like you said, we get diabetes or we get something else, or high blood pressure. They think, well, the Lord gave it to me, so I'm gonna have to deal with it the way it is, and this foolishness. No, that's that BS that they've been feeding us for all 400, 500 years, that we got to sit here and take it.
Yeah.
So it's our responsibility when we start building our own tables and starting getting each other to understand is we don't have to go through this alone. We can do this together. And we don't have to, like you said, there's folks out there doing it, but ain't nobody talking to us that out there doing it, right?
Yep.
So the narrative,
Sorry, Brandon.
you're right. You're right. The narrative has to be changed, and you said it from the very beginning. We got to pull up our own chairs or build our own table. And it's not that we're looking to go against anybody. We just we want to educate as best as we can, because we didn't have maybe not the best education or the time or the mentorship that went into us managing it the best that we can. And look, no, we can never compare ourselves to anybody else or where they're at either. So if an A1C is high and somebody else is on social media, it's not. I want to know, hey, is it like this all the time? What can I do to bring mine down? You know what I mean? So if it's a community, we have to be willing to help each other, because nobody, you said it, you said it excellently. Nobody has this completely under control, because it's just unrealistic. I don't care who you are, where you're from, how much money you got. It doesn't matter. No one absolutely has this disease completely under control, because it throws so many different curveballs. It's just unrealistic to just be in a certain range or have a specific A1C all the time. But Daryl, I'll honestly say, man, just coming on this call and to actually share your experiences, you're going to help change somebody's life, because they're going to hear, like, I didn't really talk about my diabetes, or, it's not that not, like you said, you're not ashamed of it. But at the end of the day, when you see people that look like you, it makes you feel a little bit better. And then you kind of let a guard down and you begin to talk about certain things, from out the gate. A lot of us may have talked about it when we were diagnosed, and a lot of us may not have. So it's very important that we just continue to have these conversations. Now I'm gonna go to my man Dan, um, Dan Newman in the UK. How would you say in regards to mentoring and coming up? Like, what did you have good mentorship coming up, or was it a lot of things that you had to kind of do on your own, that, just to learn about the disease in general?
So for me, sorry, I just want to jump back on something quickly that I mentioned, and also Chelsea touched on as well, is that where we talk about self-advocacy, that's, again, self-advocacy is important, but as Black men and also Black women, you're one action away from being the angry Black man or the angry Black woman, especially if they've done something wrong to you. So that's another factor that comes in. And where Chelsea also talks about the misinformation that we've been passed down and we just accept it. That's, again, something that comes into play for us, and people, and us as on this call, we've had to battle through that to get to where we are now, and not take that information just at face value. So for me, I never had a mentor growing up. I didn't really know much about type 1 growing up. My family never spoke about it, so I never knew much about it. Obviously, I knew I needed to take insulin to stay alive. I think for me, when things changed, was in my kind of early 20s. And there were a couple of things, but one key thing was that I worked for JDRF in the UK. And so when I started to work there, it opened my eyes up to all of this information so I'd heard about insulin pumps, but growing up, an insulin pump was a bad thing. Only bad diabetics have insulin pumps. And it was only working there, I'm like, oh no, that's not true. You can have an insulin pump and it's not a bad thing. And then it was just access to all of this information, which I didn't get in clinic. I didn't know I knew one other person, a family member, who had type 1, but they didn't really talk about type 1. And I had just all of a sudden had access to the information, and that changed things for me. And I think that's one thing as a community is, I'm talking about in the UK anyway, because obviously we've got the NHS, so our treatment we don't have to pay for as such. But where what we lack is the access to that information, to know how to be your own advocate, to know how to use these guidelines and work for your favor to get the technology that you need, or even to know about the technology that's available. So yeah, that's kind of my experience with mentorship and stuff. And just also touching on Daryl's point, so I only really started talking about my type 1 about 2 years ago. So I've been living with it for 20 odd years before I started to talk about it. So there's no time frame, there's no whatever. It's just whenever you're ready. And again, going back to one of the points Chelsea made, is that I think we have to be careful with social media and the way people portray type 1. And actually it's all good. There's no worries. It's all roses. There's no issues. You smile, you put a picture up, you put a nice caption. That's good. When that's not the reality of type 1. I guess that's one of my fears as well, is that people coming into the community, they could see that and be put off, because that's what happened to me a few years ago before I came back, is that I saw all of this and I was like, oh, that's not me. And it put me off because I felt like, oh, I was a bad diabetic.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that.
Tyrese, can I go ahead and ask you, since you are a caregiver for your son Trace, you know, what is that like? You know what I mean? You don't directly have type 1 diabetes, but you are a caregiver for this child who has type 1 diabetes. And can you kind of just talk about what that's like and you know, self-care?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I think we all kind of probably follow Dame Dash, and he talked
Shout out
about
to
his
Dame.
fiance. Yeah, so he was talking about his wife Rocky, and he was like, even though she doesn't have type 1, she's helping me out. So it's like she has type 1. So everything that you guys go through, thinking like, you know, you got to think ahead all the time, and that's what you got to do. And that's the same thing we do with Trace. Like, you know, if he wants his pizza, we gotta bolus this much, and then, you know, and all that. So me and my wife, it was challenging the first few years. It's still challenging now, but I think we kind of a little bit got a handle on it. And just like Chelsea said, I mean, you really don't get a handle on it at all. So, but far as to your point or to your question about self-care, it's needed for us. I mean, I know my wife, she's been seeing a therapist since the diagnosis. Me, I'm a person that likes to grill, or that time I have with going outside and cutting the grass. That's my time. Or even like right now, shoveling the snow. That's great for me, just to get a little self-care. I definitely do think I do need to see a therapist, you know, since my son's diagnosis, and I've noticed like, yeah, I need to talk to somebody. But also to you guys' point about mentor, besides Daryl, I didn't have anybody else to be a mentor for me as like a caregiver, and, you know, as a man being saying, hey, you know, you're going to experience these things, you know. But me and my wife, we do a lot of mentoring ourselves with people, with families that have a, you know, child that's newly diagnosed. Just recently, I met with a family at a hospital, and we just talked about it, and I kept it real with them, man. You're never going to get it right, you know. You're never going to get it right, but, you know, stick in there. It's all right. You're going to do the best for your child, you know. So, but yeah, definitely need the self-care, definitely need mentors, especially for those caregivers. Because you know, when your child is diagnosed, you feel like you're on a lonely road by yourself.
And, and can I ask you this? How has it been, you know, far as mentoring your son, you know, because ultimately I always tell people, if their kids have it, you know, the caregiver has it, the parent has it, the grandmother has it.
Yeah.
How has it been for you to find other caregivers within the diabetes space to kind of help you out, you know, in those early stages of, you know, Trace having diabetes?
It's hard. I mean, no one really wants to talk about it. I think social media has helped us out a lot, you know, going to these Facebook groups and things like that. But really, no one wants to talk about it. You know, really, you know, what we found, no one wants to talk about it. So we're like an open book. I remember when he was first diagnosed, and we had a nurse in our room, and her son was diagnosed, and she was just like, she excused my French, she was like, hey, this is a bitch. She was like, my son, she said, I mean, and the crazy thing is, she said, you know, my son's been having it for 5 years. I think he was 10 at the time. And she was like, me and my husband divorced because of this. You know, she just laid it out. And that was the realest thing ever. And then fast forward, you know, and I talked about this, me and my wife talked about this in our live the other day. We even talked about getting a divorce at one time. You know, it was just so rough. And it was mainly because of me. And I told people, I said, it's kind of crazy in these Facebook groups, you hear the wives all the time complaining about their husbands not being there and helping out. And I was looking at it and I was like, that's me. That's what I've been doing, you know, and I had to man up myself. And I needed that mentor that's a caregiver, like a man, to be like, man, Tyrese, man, you need to step up, man. Stop being a chump. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I've been out here doing, and really talking to the men who are, have children that are diagnosed, and just like, man, be a man, help your spouse out, help your baby mother out, help them out. This is a road you guys have to do together. So
Can I throw something out there? You got to stay away from these Facebook groups.
Yeah, that's true.
There are too many people on there who, I don't know whether they're just trolls or whether they're legitimately having issues, but there's too many people on there that all they want to do is complain. All they want to do is stay in that wallow in their whatever it is that they're having to deal with, to the point where all they want to do is pitch it on everybody else so everybody else can be down with them. That ain't helping no damn body. Okay. Because I've been in these groups and I've seen like some of the most ridiculous questions, the most ridiculous complaints. And it's like, I try to be objective. Okay, maybe they just don't know. And then when you mess around and try to help, then what happens? All hell breaks loose. Then you this, that, and the other, and then you don't know this and all. Then the next thing you know, somebody getting banned and all, get kicked out of the group. And that's why I don't recommend dealing with a lot of these Facebook groups unless they're vetted, for lack of a better term, unless whoever's running it, whether the admins are actually doing their job. Because if you get in there and you start seeing a whole bunch of rigmarole going on and the admins aren't doing anything about it, get out. Because you're going to end up just getting, your whole feed is going to be nothing but BS day after day coming out of these groups, because these folks will not stop. And the biggest ones I remember was when folks were actually bartering for diabetes supplies, where they would be trading, whether it be pump supplies or strips or whatever, to try and get insulin, this, that, and the other. Because I did that. I bartered because I needed some at the time. I did what I had to do. But there are other folks on there that is really scamming people. They'll go on and say, well, I got something to get rid of. Then just DM me. Then you DM, and then they're trying to start talking money.
Yeah.
And so that's why you don't see a lot of those groups anymore, because Facebook went in and trying to clear a bunch of them out because somebody messed it up for everybody else. Now all those people that actually need something, they're suffering because of some fool. So that's why these groups are dangerous to an extent. You have to really kind of take it with a grain of salt, feel it out, see what's going on, definitely before you even start interacting with these folks, because they'll show themselves right up front. And then that's when well, I got to bounce. I'm getting out of here. So just be careful and warn anybody else that you meet that's newly diagnosed. Give them that same warning when they start going to look for any type of connection. Just warn them straight up, just be careful, because it's a rabbit hole.
Definitely.
Josie, that's a great point. I also want to highlight, that's why it's so important for us to have people that look like us and people that we can trust and respect. When I was, during the pandemic, I lost my job and I didn't have insurance. And of course, I was running low on insulin. So I'm looking around on my Instagram and my Facebook, and I'm like, I don't have this, but I have to put this information out here because, of course, I need insulin to survive. And unfortunately, shout out to Brandon and Matt. you know, they were able to somehow, some way pull some strings and ship me some insulin. But you know what I mean? Like you said, it's a good point to say that if I didn't trust them or I didn't know them, you know what I'm saying? Like I don't know what these people are shipping me. I don't know if I'm really getting what I need. And Teresa also wanted to bring up another point as well. You brought up divorce, which is something that's talked about, right? I find it so. What hit me when you said that regarding, you know, your children being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and then divorce possibly coming up, for me was that I've heard that situation when something else happens to a child for parents, and that something else is if a couple loses a child. You know what I'm saying? If a couple like that's, you know what I'm saying? That's detrimental. That's huge, right? So that just made me think like diabetes might as well be in that same boat. You know what I mean? The way that we're describing it in different things, and obviously it's not the same as losing a child, but that's some heavy shit, you know? Right. I just wanted to say that.
It changes. It changes a lot of things. It definitely changes a lot of things.
And could I just, so obviously I'm not a parent and to a child with type 1, but I have spoken to parents on my podcast, and it's come up again that after a child's been diagnosed, and I don't know if it's the same for you, Taurus, it's like they've lost that child that they were first born with, and then they now have a new child, even though it's the same child, but all the hopes and the dreams that they have at that initial point of diagnosis, they feel are gone because they're now having to deal with type 1, and that's something that's come up in numerous conversations with parents, and you could see how it can lead to divorce, because it is, like you said, the loss of a child or apparent loss of a child.
For sure, definitely. I'm gonna go to Antoine. He's on the bus right now. He's probably on a world tour, you know. But I want to ask him about you know, as it relates to self-care, because obviously you know you're always on the road. You know you're doing music. You know, we all live busy lives, but you know, being a musician, man, that's a different beast, you know. So in regards to just taking care of yourself and self-care in general, for you to be at an optimum level every time, you know, you hit that saxophone, like, you know, what are some things that you've been able to do?
I got you. It's crazy. So when a couple minutes ago, we were just on the food stop. I tried to go to Burger King to get some food, but I couldn't get in because you can't get in because like the dining room's closed. So I had to get Dorito chips. Like I'm really mad. So I got to get Doritos. I'm really upset. But so like stuff like that kind of happens all the time. And one time I like pre-bolus for some food and I wasn't able to get it, and I had to like, you know, try to not die and eat a whole bunch of, you know, random stuff like Doritos and Oreos to make it by. But that stuff happens all the time. But my one thing I really want to do with diabetes, and especially like within our community, is to help accessibility to things such as like Dexcom and in a Libre. Like CGMs have helped me in my career like so much, because I don't have to worry about what my blood sugar may be before a show or after a show or in the middle of a show or middle of a field show when I'm in marching band in high school and college and stuff like that. So like technology has really helped me immensely when it comes to
looks like we're losing
so my life and with diabetes.
Might be on those back roads in Georgia right now.
But one thing he did say that I will piggyback on is there's some anxiety that comes with diabetes too, man. Having type 1 diabetes, man, and the CGM thing is absolutely real. Like there was times where I would walk around and I would act like I would feel like I was super high, but then I would check my sugar and I'd be at like 103, or vice versa. I would feel low I would be at 100 and, 190, 250 or 300 or whatever. And so that CGM thing is absolutely real, man. And I was half joking with Tyrese before when I said, man, throw me a Dexcom, man, so I can stop playing with this.
No, definitely.
It's real. It is absolutely real, man, especially when you go to sleep. For me, there's been a few nights where I woke up in the 45s and 50s. You know what I'm saying? Low, cold sweats. You know how you feel when your blood sugar is low. And it's terrifying for me, man. So there's been nights where I've literally went to sleep, like did not know it. And I had a really good friend whose father passed away in his sleep because his blood sugar went too low and he didn't feel his lows.
Wow.
And so there has been times where it's been like from an anxiety. It's been real. I got a Dexcom and I started getting those alerts. Like they used to get a alert because if you go over by one, yeah, exactly. You go over by, but now you get those alerts. It just makes it puts you at ease a lot, especially with my.
For sure.
I wish like hell would have had a CGM when I played football back in the day, but I didn't.
And just to follow what Antoine was saying, like the CGM has been a game changer. I don't think anybody would argue against that. One of the most important things is I think even when you're diagnosed, I think it should be mandatory that you have to have a CGM because, I know when I was diagnosed, I'm pretty sure a majority of you guys as well, when I was diagnosed, they said that I had to wait a year before I could even get a pump. And I realized how important, that having a pump, is one thing, but I think having a CGM, that's a completely different thing. I think just being thrown in the fire, having to check your blood sugar, at the time when I was diagnosed, I was checking 4 to 7 times a day, consistently, so, I think having a CGM, it just makes you feel more comfortable in dealing with the disease. And like Daryl said, like it takes that anxiety off of like, okay, I got this. Okay, I hear an alert. Let me go check. Let me make sure I'm good. And I think having a good CGM that you can depend on, whether it's if you're a caregiver for your child or for yourself personally for work or sports or anything else that you do in everyday life. So I think that's very important. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna open it up completely, but I want to. I'm gonna start with Terrell, and I want to talk about clinical trust within the medical field in general. And has your clinical trust been like one? How has it been won or lost, like with dealing with medical professionals, as far as endocrinologists, ophthalmologists, podiatrists, anything that may have steered you away or deterred you or made you switch or anything that's made you feel comfortable within that field, especially as it relates to the Black community?
Well, for me personally, when I was initially diagnosed with diabetes, I was misdiagnosed, and it was because I was Black. Well, the thing was, he told me it was because I was Black. I had family history of type 2 diabetes. And he told me I had a thick neck, which was the strangest thing in the world. I was like, a thick neck? I was like, bro, what were you talking about? I was like, I had never heard of such a thing. I was like, that was the wildest thing in the world.
That's wild. That's wild. That's wild.
And at the time I was in South Carolina and I moved to Atlanta. This was back in he gave me that diagnosis in 2005, I want to say. And then I moved to Atlanta, and the doctor I had here, he kept telling me a similar type thing. He just kept pushing, you have type 2 diabetes and you've got this and everything he told me was because you need to lose weight, and I said, well, I do have a sinus infection, I think. He said, well, if you lose weight, everything will be good and, and all that. And I was like, well, bro, that doesn't even make any sense. And so I decided to go see an endocrinologist. And I did some research, found a good one, and I went and seen him. He took a ton of blood, ran a whole bunch of tests, and one of the tests he did was the GAD antibody test. Came back and says, you actually have type 1 diabetes. And I was like, really? He says, yeah. He says, they've been telling you the wrong thing all along. And fast forward to now, I've had the same endocrinologist ever since 2006 or 2007. when he diagnosed me with that, I was in the honeymoon phase for a few years, and then, of course, now I am full blown with diabetes. Not long after, I went into DKA, was in the hospital, some other things after that. He tried to get me to go on the pump then, but I had some kind of stigma against being on a pump and all that, and I was like, let me think about it. And finally, after a couple of years of being MDI, I decided to go on the pump. Love it. And I've actually had pretty good luck with my, endocrinologists and doctors and everything since then. And I know a lot of people haven't. So I've been very fortunate on that side of things.
Thank you for sharing.
Hey, Terrell, which pump did you choose, man? Which pump are you on?
I'm on the Medtronic.
Okay.
I'm about to upgrade to the 770. I'm on the 670 now, but the 770's out now, and I'm about to upgrade to that.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna actually kick it back because I know we had got interrupted with Antoine when he was speaking. He was speaking on the CGMs. I don't know if you remember exactly what you were saying, but you were saying how the CGM was a huge game changer for you and just managing your diabetes in general.
Yeah, man. I kind of agree, man. I feel like it should be accessible to all diabetics. Like as soon as you get diabetes, like, okay, here you go this is the best aid that you will ever have when it comes to managing diabetes. And it's so inaccessible to people who don't have insurance or to people who can't afford it. And it's crazy because I didn't even know about it until I started working at a diabetic camp in the summer. And the diabetic, it may be like 95% white kids, like 5% black or something like that. And it's like, I wasn't exposed to any of that until I was hanging around these white kids who had the accessibility to be able to, afford this kind of stuff. Like all the diabetic friends I've had that have been black or kind of just like me, and kind of didn't know too much about the other side of diabetes, you know what I'm saying? So I was kind of immersed in that for a summer, and I'm just asking people about diabetes and Afrezza and all this other stuff that they have access to. And I'm kind of I guess we all have access to it, but they have, the means and knowledge of how to get to it. And it's just crazy. I just really want to spread that to, other kids that are like us that, may not know about it. And it's just, man, that's like my A1C is now like 6 point something like that. Before the CGM, it was like 9, 10, you know what I'm saying? And that's just, the quality of my life has gotten so much better. And I know that's, the same with many of you going this, on the call and in life and stuff like that. So, man, I just think it's really important. It's really super important.
For sure. And I'll ask you this too. What was the camp that you attended?
Oh, so it's Camp Kudzu, and it's in Georgia.
Okay.
So yeah, I attended when I was a kid. I went from like 2 or 3 years when I was a kid, but for the longest, I've been really like uneasy around white people. So like when I was a kid, it was kind of just me with a whole bunch of other white kids, and I was just like, "This is not really the place for me." I stopped going.
Okay.
So, you know what I'm saying? It was one of those situations. So when I got older and I'm more comfortable with myself and with diabetes and, who I am, I was able to go back and immerse myself with, that culture of people. And then it's definitely been beneficial to me for the past 3 or 4 years, just, back in that community with them. So
that's good. That's good to hear, because I was like, oh man, you stepped away, because I was going to ask how the camp experience was, and that's what I got a lot out of, like just speaking at camps and seeing, how lopsided it was. Like maybe it being 1 or 2 black kids at a camp, and it's just like, but I think when you realize like diabetes, it doesn't know race, it doesn't know economics, so at any point in time, always want to help and give back in any way that you can. And that's pretty dope that you actually still go back and help out, man, because, you never know where somebody is at, with their diagnosis, and how you can potentially help save their life, just by helping them out a little bit.
Facts.
Now, does anybody else have anything in regards to? I'm gonna jump back to the clinical trust. Like any and I know Chelsea, I know you probably have some interesting stories in regards to just Black people being involved in clinical trials and just trusting doctors in general, you know, because I know a lot of us don't. I'll be honest. I think I know one Black endocrinologist, and when I was first diagnosed at the University of Michigan, yeah, I said it came on my mouth. I had a Black endocrinologist. He was a male, but I had only seen him once, and that was before I went off to college. So I don't, you know, in 17 years, I've only seen 2 Black doctors, which is I had to kind of wake up myself, like, is this real? Like, you know, so yeah, Chelsea, if you have any experience, you know, as far as in the clinical trust world of medical professionals.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done a great deal of diabetes studies, mostly because the majority of the ones that I come across were for type 2. So I didn't come across a whole lot that were for geared towards type 1. But anytime that I would take advantage of any type of research study, I basically got word from someone that I trusted. So another advocates that I've worked with before, they would pitch something, hey, something coming up over here. I think you'd be good for that. You want to try it out? Because I'm totally open for it all the time. I mean, I guess I consider myself a human guinea pig. I don't mind putting myself out there for the greater good, I guess you could say. Plus, it's going to help me become more educated, and plus, the main caveat is that adding some color to the mix and trying to set an example for folks that may be either listening to me or met me somewhere, or to let them know that if you do your due diligence and educate yourself, that can help you avoid a lot of pitfalls when it comes to dealing with these types of researchers. You know who's behind it when you find out who's funding it, find out who the people are, do your homework, because you got the whole world right there in your pocket. You can search it and find out who these people are before you actually get involved in something like that. You ain't gonna sit up there and just go out and buy a car from anybody. So you know better than to sit up there and put your life on the line for just anybody. So you do your due diligence and put in that work, because that's the thing. What we got to do is people, we got to start putting in the work. I mean, white folks are comfortable with us being the same way we've been for over 500 years. They like us when we're quiet. They like us when we when we act like Morgan Freeman in one of his great movies. You know, that lovable magic Negro that you will often find. That's what they're comfortable with. And as you know, he just said that angry Negro thing comes into play when whenever you start to stand up for yourself or question, especially now. Okay, let's go back to January 6th. Okay, nobody's looking at us like, you know, most folks are understanding now why we're upset the way we are. You know, during the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. Now they're actually starting to get it, but we've been screaming for how long? So we have to educate ourselves and to basically empower ourselves. And that's what I think, that's why I appreciate what we're doing right now, is actually putting ourselves out there to be more visible, to get more folks involved. Um, you know, all of us have had our experiences in, you know, research. And so now folks just come to us and ask us questions of well, I've been wondering about this. What do you think? Since we're taking upon ourselves that responsibility to make examples, to set examples and become resources in a sense. And so yeah, I mean, you run into that okey doke every once in a while, but you got to educate yourself about what you're getting into. You know, you can't just jump on anything that comes across Facebook or Instagram or wherever you might come across something on either on campus or whatever. You have to educate yourself about what you're getting into, because our biggest hurdle as Black people when dealing with healthcare in general is the history. It's always been about the history because of what was done to our ancestors in the name of quote unquote science. We were experimented on, right? And so that it's amazing that much of that was done so long ago, but it's still prevalent today because that information was passed down by generation to generation. And so now we still have that stigma around our neck. And just and to quote what one of you guys said, diabetes doesn't know race or whatever, but the pharmaceutical companies and the government does. They know. So that's why we got to educate ourselves and empower ourselves.
And I'll say this too, Chelsea. I think, as we look at it as the stigma of getting involved in like clinical research, I participated in my first trial when I moved to San Diego, and that was a reason for me moving here, to just really dig into the diabetes community even more than what I had already have done. But for me, it's like you can't expect things to change if you don't speak up and you don't also advocate for not just yourself but for other people that look like you as well. And then also you have to get involved. You can't say, oh well, you should do this, and you never tried it. And I think one of the biggest things, like when we look at the history on clinical research and what has happened in the past to Black people, the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, I think that's probably one of the biggest ones that comes to mind. But that's not the only one. But when we look at that, there's trauma that comes with that, because we still, we have ancestors and we have family members that are tied to those individuals, that understand those stories and understand what those individuals went through. So, a lack of trust, I will honestly say probably does come, from hearing those things and still being able to visibly see those things that have happened. Let's be honest, it wasn't that long ago. If we really looking at the grand scope of things, it wasn't that long ago. But I think in order to change it, we have to do our due diligence, like you said, figure out if this is a study for me to get involved in, or if this is something that makes sense for me. Because at the end of the day, we're going to have the same outcome if people aren't trying different things. We can't point the finger if we're not getting involved, and I think that's huge. And I'm not saying just get involved in anything, but I think, Chelsea said it, do your due diligence. If it's something that you think that you may benefit from, or you may be able to at least experience it and benefit from it, to talk it out with somebody else. I think that changes a lot of things for us. We have to be willing to kind of let that guard down and be willing to trust, and then get involved in some of these things as well.
Hey, Brandon.
I'll go on, Tyrese.
No, I was just going to jump in because I was listening to a Black doctor, and she was saying that when she went through medical school, all of the medical books, all it had was white folks in it. And that was it, all the pictures of rashes and things like that. So a lot of the doctors don't know how to treat Black folks. And it's kind of crazy. And I hear stuff like what Terrell was saying, that, hey, it's because your neck is thick. What does that mean? What does that even mean? I remember when my son was diagnosed, before he was diagnosed, so it was November. He started urinating a lot, he was real thirsty. And our doctor at the time, it wasn't the endo, but our doctor's regular doctor was like, oh, he's teething. It can't be that. He's urinating and he's very thirsty all the time and he's real lethargic. But what she came up with is he's teething. And this was a Black doctor too. So, maybe, I don't know, maybe what I'm finding out, a lot of doctors, your regular doctors, your primary care physicians and things like that, they don't know anything really about diabetes because they're mastering everything else. They're mastering foot fungus, they're mastering blood pressure, things like that. And then diabetes just one thing on their list, on their spectrum they have to look at. But it was just kind of funny to me. It was just like, yeah, he's teething. That's what it is. I was like, no, it's not. What's wrong with it?
Let me ask you this then. So then how did that affect your trust in, I guess, the clinical setting then, as far as clinical medical professionals? Like, one, it being a Black doctor, and then two, you know, them giving you, we're saying they didn't know, he or she didn't even give you accurate information. It was that your son was teething. You know, like how did that make you feel like moving forward once you did find out, you know, that he had type 1?
I mean, it just it really just bothered me because I was just I mean I was thoroughly mad. You know, you could ask my wife. I was like all this time because the last time when my wife brought him in to the doctor, at that time he was just he was just laid out. He was just, and she brought him to the doctor, and then that was when after a month or so she was like, oh, let's do a urinating test, and then she found out, oh, you need to take him to emergency. You know, and that's, you know, and then we went to emergency and we found out he had diabetes. But as far as the trust, I'm like, I don't know. I can't even explain the frustration I went through because we could have had this nipped in the bud in November, and it all the way to January of the next year. That's when we found out, you know, he had diabetes. But all that time, because for me and my wife, we were like, because we kept on giving him apple juice. We were killing him.
Yeah, but you didn't know. You didn't know.
We didn't know. We didn't know, but his blood sugar was over 1,000. I mean, it was just, yeah.
Doctor, fire.
Can I chime in on that too, real quick, Brandon? So, Tyrese, I think, and I don't want to discredit any type of doctors. You know what I mean? I know that they go to school for this. I have a friend who's actually in medical school right now, and she's trying to get her MD and do her thing, you know. But I think it's important to note that we, specifically in the Western world, right, we also don't talk about Eastern medicine. And I'm not one of these people that's like Eastern medicine is the end all be all, but it is another option. Even when it relates to type 1 diabetes, I think that's important to talk about. But what I really wanted to say was that how many times have we all as a community, as a group, how many times have you went to the doctor with something minor? Let's say, you know, my arm hurts when I wake up. You go to the doctor, what do they tell you? They might do some x-rays, they might do some scanning and different things. Oh yeah, here's a prescription for Vicodin. Take this, call me in a week if it doesn't work, right? That is the spiel, you know what I mean? So they have the book knowledge and the scientific knowledge of why these things happen and diseases and different things. But, and again, I don't want to discredit any type of doctor, but if I'm telling you to take this and call me in a week if it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Two
things I'll say really quickly. The first thing is, so Tyrese knows this. I was for 5.5 years before I joined, went back to the sports side. I was over corporate partnerships for the largest healthcare system in Indiana. And there's an ongoing fight between primary care doctors and specialists, so endocrinologists, because what happens is a primary care doc doesn't want to give their patient up because when they give them to a specialist, chances are that specialist will never, ever give that patient back to the primary care doc. And so sometimes a primary care doc will just make up the dumbest shit just to make sure that you don't go to the specialist because they want to basically keep you. That's the first thing. Second thing is, again, before I joined IU Health, we worked with this company out of Minneapolis called Boston Scientific, who ran a study called Close the Gap. And it basically was a study that showed that white male doctors treat people of color extremely different. And it was about heart health. So there's a number of heart health disparities. So to your point, Mike, a Black person goes in, they give you a list of symptoms that they're having. A white person goes in and gives you that same list of symptoms. They're going to write you a prescription that says you're probably just tired, you need to go home and sleep it off. Whereas a white person, they're going to send them to a cardiologist and say, you're getting ready to have a heart attack. And it's just wild. And there's so much disparity out there. So to Chelsea's point earlier, you got to do your research and you got to do your homework, and you can't always rely on, look, these doctors are not God. You can't rely on a person that's just like you to put your pants on, just like they put their pants on just like you put your pants on, to let them dictate your life. If you don't feel like it's right, you got to go find a second opinion immediately. and you're able to do that. This is not slavery. Slavery is gone. You actually have the ability to go to a different hospital and see a different person. Nobody is holding you accountable to that. So those are things I would just put out there. But there is a real fight going on in healthcare between primary care docs and specialists. So just always keep that in your mind when you get recommendations from a primary care physician.
Just to kind of jump in 2 points, I think that kind of highlights the difference between the healthcare systems. So in the US to say the UK. So obviously things do go wrong in terms of primary, we call them general practitioners, so your GP. Obviously things do go wrong there. But in terms of actually getting that referral to a consultant, it's typically a lot easier because you'll go to the consultant for the specialist stuff, but for your general, if you've got a cold or whatever, you're still going to go to your GP. And because there's no money involved in that part of the system, there's not that, well, from patient's perspective anyway, there's not that much of a friction that you experience. And the second point is, and I don't know how others feel about this, but we talk about the relationship that the Black community has with healthcare professionals. So on the one hand, there's the lack of trust. But then on the other hand, I don't know if anyone's found it, there's almost like implicit trust that, well, what the doctor says is right. And then people don't question it. And it's almost like a contradiction, but it's such a complex relationship that the community has with healthcare professionals, because there's no trust, but then there's complete trust to take these tablets that are for my blood pressure, but not question, well, do these blood pressure tablets interact with other tablets? Are there better options out there? And it's like, oh, the doctor said I have to take it, so I'm taking it. And I've been guilty of that in the past. And it's only as I've educated myself that I now have the information equipped to ask questions and to say, look, I've tried these 2 tablets. I'm not taking them no more. Let's find something else. This doesn't work for me. And it's just it's such a complicated relationship that the community has with the healthcare system. I'm obviously talking from a UK perspective, but I don't know if it's the same in the US or if anyone has any different thoughts.
It's the same. It's the relationship with authority in general. We get the same thing when we're dealing with that judge or that police officer. You know, that's why we keep both hands on the steering wheel when them blue lights hit, because he's authority. And what am I? Okay. So it goes way back. I mean, let's talk Jim Crow. Okay. It's always been that relationship between African Americans and authority, and anyone who we deem as a person of authority. Hell, it ain't even got to be a white person. It can be that black preacher up there telling you, you know, love the Lord and pass the plate, because he's an authority figure. But you go run in the church on Sunday morning, paying for his Cadillac.
Right.
Okay. So it's always been that same thing. It's just with the relationship with authority.
And to Chelsea's point, man, it's so important that you got to get to know your doctor. You got to actually do your homework and actually take it a step beyond just your homeboy said, look, I know that doctor is cool, so let me just go holler at this doctor. You got to, just like your doctor wants to get to know you, you got to get to know your doctor.
Most importantly, yeah. And you know, you're your own best advocate at any point in time. If you don't feel like it's right, it don't feel right, trust your gut. If you don't feel like you're getting the results or you're getting the right right dosages, the right equipment, you know, you have to speak up, you know, because at the end of the day, they have a job. They got 30-minute segment with you. They're going to tell you, this is what we're going to do, this we're going to do. No, you voice your concerns. And how I always gauge it is my doctor listening to my needs or what the problems are that I'm bringing to them? Because ultimately your doctor should help with the solution. I'm not saying they can solve everything, but they should be helping with the solution to help you continue to live that best life. We're going to jump into, I'm going to ask a question in regards to something that's very important, I think. And one thing that you wish you would have known in the past being diagnosed with type 1? And what would you tell to a newly diagnosed family or individual that has just been diagnosed with diabetes, whether it's a young kid, whether it's a teenager or an adult? And you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna start with Michael. Start with you, Michael.
Oh man. I would definitely tell them to have patience with themselves. I think, you know what I mean? Have patience with the process, have patience with, you know, whoever it is. If it's your kid that's been diagnosed, if it's been you that's been diagnosed, you have to have patience because it's going to be tough originally. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. You're going to wake up. You're going to get frustrated when you're trying to count carbs and you overdose. You're going to get frustrated when you underdose. You have to have patience. The second thing I'm going to say is to not neglect. I think we kind of talked about this briefly in our chat here, to not neglect the self-care. You know what I mean? Just because we're diabetics or just because you've been diagnosed or put into this position doesn't mean that we already have the struggles of everyday life, right? Paying bills, you know what I mean? If you have a partner, you're dealing with them. If you have kids, that's another thing, you know? So self-care, man. It's important to have that. And lastly, I would just tell them that, you know, I don't even want to say everything happens for a reason, but you may have been diagnosed to be an example for somebody else. That's what I'll say. I'll say that I feel like we are given like our purpose in life when we're kids and we don't even know it sometimes. You know what I'm saying? And I think that for me, when I was diagnosed at 7, like Dan, I didn't start talking about diabetes until recently, but I've lived with it for over 20 years. And so for me, while I feel like there's different purposes and different meanings for everybody, I do feel like, you know what I mean, certain things do happen for a reason.
I appreciate you sharing that, man. I appreciate you sharing that. Let's go to Terrell.
Well, I guess for me, I just think that, you know, that diagnosis doesn't change, you know, it's not the end of everything. And it doesn't mean that your life is over. It just means that, you know, you may have to take a slight detour, but you still can go to where you're trying to get to. It's a learning curve, yes. And there's some things that you're going to have to learn how to do and some things that you're always going to have to do because, of course, it's diabetes. And you're going to have to learn to do some things to stay alive. But just like everything else, there's always going to be some things you're going to have to know how to do to stay alive. This is just something that's tangible and it's right in front of you. But the fact of the matter is that it's going to make you stronger and it's going to make you, you know, more aware of your everyday way of doing things. It doesn't have to define you. It's just a part of your life. And that's the way I try to look at it. I know a lot of people, you know, like what Chelsea was saying, you get some folks in some of these groups or blogs or whatever, you know, they make it seem like diabetes is the worst thing in the world. And that, you know, they become defined by the negative, but I know what you focus on determines what you miss. And a lot of times, if they just continue to focus on the negative, they'll never see the positive about that, you know. And sometimes there can be positives that can come out of it. You can become a stronger person because of the fact that you're monitoring what you're putting into your body. You know, you're monitoring, you know, what you're doing on a daily basis. Yes, there is going to be some times where you're tired of doing it, you know, but that's okay. There's times you can be tired of going to school every day. There'll be times you're tired of going to work every day, but you're still gonna pay attention to it. But it's not the end of your life. It could be just the beginning, and it can unlock a lot of things that maybe you didn't think that you had in you. You know, strength, perseverance, resilience, things of that nature, that maybe some qualities in yourself that you're able to unlock that can get you to some goals that you still can keep.
I appreciate that, Terrell. I mean, you got all valid points, without a doubt, without a doubt. Let's go ahead and kick it to Antoine. Let
All right, so my bad if it's like noise in the background.
you
But
good, man. We know you on tour right now, man. What's
you
up,
funny,
man?
man. Hey, so one thing I try to tell just kids I talk to, kids I like I'm mentoring involved with, whether it's like diabetes or music or whatever in school or whatever. I try to tell them that mind over matter. You feel me? Like perception is everything. The way you perceive the world is the way, like ultimately, like that's how you're gonna move. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like to piggyback off of what Terrell said, man. Like the outlook, like don't look at it as negativity. Don't look at it as like an element of like something that's can hold you back. It's like I don't even really like to say I'm a diabetic. Like I'm just a guy who happens to have diabetes. You feel me? Diabetes does not define who I am. Like I'm a musician, but I don't. You know what I'm saying? Music doesn't really define every aspect of my life. It's just a part. It's a sector. You got to compartmentalize and be able to still flourish and do everything that you want to do. Like it's not who you are. You feel me? So that's what I always try to tell kids. And like, if I would have known that when I was younger, actually kind of my whole life, I kind of just been kind of diabetes has always been kind of like an afterthought a little bit. But I wish if I would have known how to compartmentalize this and then still be able to do everything else I want to do, like 100%, it's like I feel like I would be in a much better place. Kind of like overall, not really just with diabetes, but kind of overall, it's every aspect of my life. So yeah, that's one thing I wish I could really push to the younger generation. And
I think we lost you a little bit.
dang.
We lost you.
Dang.
We lost you a little bit right there at the end. I don't know if you hit mute or by accident or not.
I'm somewhere. I don't know. I'm somewhere like in Louisiana. Somewhere. I don't know.
It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. No,
yeah. Hope you caught most of it.
Yeah, we appreciate you sharing that, man.
For sure.
That's definitely good insight. Now I'm gonna kick it to Dan. Dan, my man, Dan.
I agree with what's been said so far, and I think for me, one of the key things I wish I'd known or would say is all about education. Educate yourself about insulins, educate yourself about treatments available, educate yourself about insulin pumps. Just educate yourself about stuff. Also, moving on, educate yourself about cultural foods and the impacts that they have on blood sugar levels, because for a lot of us it's carbs everywhere, big spoon of rice, chicken, this, that on plates, and just carbs. But if you don't have that education of how the carbs are then impacting your levels, what in my experience anyway, you're just eating, you don't really know what you're doing, but you can still live with diabetes and still have your culture as part of your life with diabetes. You don't need to cut out that side, but we just need to educate ourselves, because that information isn't out there. The information that I've always received from dietitians has not been culturally appropriate for me. It's always been, don't have 2 tablespoons of rice. We use big spoons of rice. No one's having, I don't count tablespoons. I just have a big spoon of rice, or I get given a plate of food. I don't know. I don't say to family, oh, just put 2 tablespoons of rice. And again, when you're getting information that isn't culturally appropriate to you, you're not going to follow it. And then you're just lost. And it's almost like you're just running on a treadmill, because diabetes is still continuing, but you don't have the information to help you to keep going. So for me, it's about education, and particularly around the cultural side. That I think that's key for us as a community.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think you hit on some very important topics, especially education. Education is key to everything that we do, within the diabetes world and outside of the diabetes world. So I'm gonna kick it to Tyrese. I'll let us know, far as what you would, what are some things that you wish you have known in the past, and some things that you would like to let somebody know newly diagnosed, as far as a family or the individual living with it, whether they're a kid, teenager, or an adult, because you come from a different perspective than everybody else on this call.
I would just say to any parents out there with a child that's newly diagnosed, be patient. I think somebody already said it's a learning curve. You're going to mess up sometimes, and that's okay. Be an advocate for your child. Um, uh, Always look for your child's best interest. Um, do your research on, like I said, CGM and the different pumps and things like that. Um, what's something else? Yeah, I mean that would be it. Just be patient. Don't get too frustrated. Um, and 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 let your child know they're not different. They just have diabetes, but one thing I do with Trace all the time, I tell him how great he is. I'm always giving him words of encouragement and things like that. So I'm always telling him he's great. And then here's the other part too. When they say this, because I have an older son. Um, get your other child involved too as well. Get them involved. You don't want your other child feeling like that you're giving too much time to the other child. So you get them involved. Get them involved in with the child's diabetes and things like that. So uh, that's what I would say.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. So we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna bring it home. I'm gonna let Chelsea bring it home for us.
Yeah, if I met someone who was just newly diagnosed, taking into consideration, from my experience, my first question, well, like I said, I wouldn't necessarily. I'd start it off with a question. I'd ask, "Where's your head at right now? What are you thinking about? How are you feeling?" And let it kind of go from there. Um, and then ask them if they want me to provide them any help, any information. Just basically, what can I do? And the reason I say that is this: when somebody is newly diagnosed with diabetes or any other chronic illness for that matter, oftentimes the wrong way to go, in my opinion, is to start hitting them with information right off the bat. Because in the beginning you haven't sorted out your emotions yet. Because a lot of stuff that's going in through your head is, um, I don't know anything about diabetes. I know my grandmama had it, but she died of it. So now I got to deal with that. So now as you go in all these different, you don't know anything. All you know is what you overheard. So that's why I say, where's your head at right now? And how are you feeling? Now, if I was going to offer anything, the first thing I'm going to make sure that they understand is this is not your fault. You did not do this to yourself. The Lord is not cursing you. You didn't make any mistakes, that this just happened. And now this is something else that's a part of you that you got to work through. Now, at that point, if I get that in their head, then the rest, I'm going to let them come to me. And then you ask me anything you need, anything that you don't understand, whatever advice I can give. Because the last thing I want to do is overwhelm you with a whole bunch of stuff that's going to confuse you, and then you start, running on the internet, start looking for whatever this, that, and the other. Let's just tell me what you need, and let's come up with a game plan, and then I'm gonna help you out the best I can.
And I appreciate that. Yeah, I think having that game plan out the gate, it's overwhelming. We face a lot of emotions when we're first diagnosed, and we can all say like we got it. I remember being that young kid in the hospital saying I got it, and you got it because mentally you're like I can do this, but what you don't know is everything that comes with it, and it just takes baby steps. It takes learning, just like anything else. It's reps, it's repetitions, just like anything else. And right when you think you have it figured out, you don't really have it truly figured out. And that's in life, but that's dealing with diabetes too in life. And I think the most important thing is we we live with diabetes, but it doesn't define who we are or what we're capable of doing. I want to thank all of you guys for joining this call today. I want to thank Michael for helping me co-host this thing. And these are discussions that we have to continue to have. If none less, people need to see these because we were once at that stage where we didn't see other people that look like us in the diabetes community, and it's important that we're able to connect with those individuals, and it's important for us to be able to talk to those individuals and let them know that we can do anything and you can do anything that you want to do in life. Is it going to be hard? Is it going to be challenging? Yes, it is, for sure, without a doubt. But at the end of the day, like I'll always say, we live with diabetes, but it doesn't define who we are, what we're capable of doing. So I want to thank you guys again. And this has been great. I'm sorry that we ran over on time, but this is a great conversation that I think can kind of help generate some more conversations within our diabetes community and specifically our Black diabetes community. So thank you guys. I appreciate it. If you don't know, now you know. Bolus Maximus is not sponsored by anybody, but if you would like to get involved or sponsor a podcast,
please reach out to us at thebolusmaximus@gmail.com. That is the THEBOLUSMAXIMUS @gmail, or through our website, bolus, BOLUSM.org. That is www.bolusm.org. We also have an Instagram, Facebook, and a YouTube channel. Please feel free to reach out.